The triple header is finally coming to a close with the British GP. We've seen some pretty heavy updates from Spain to Austria, and now, even here in Silverstone, the teams have brought new parts on their upgraded cars. This track can be very deceptive and put teams in a weird spot when it comes to downforce. The rear wings and front wings are going to be very important here for downforce, but also for the straight line speed. We'll see plenty of adaptations from low downforce to pretty high downforce as well. But right before getting into all those updates, wanted to thank you guys for support on the channel. It's doing great, and I see all the comments, so thank you so much for that. If you're new here, I'd love if you subscribe. It really helps the channel and shows me that I'm doing a good job, so thank you so much for that. But let's get into the rear wings as we always start with these weekends. It's going to be a different order for these rear wings. We're going to go Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull, and Alpine. And we can see different wings on all four of these teams. Starting off with Ferrari, it's the adaptation we've seen most on this car. It's that medium downforce rear wing, which I suspected for Ferrari as well. They've talked a lot about optimizing the upgrade package that they have. This should be a step in the right direction considering they've seen the most data for this wing. This same wing was also used in Austria, and they're going to reuse it now for Silverstone. It's going to depend on the wet weather. It's possible they could change it in the free practice sessions. I do think they're going to stick with this, considering the type of track Silverstone is. Looking at McLaren, it's actually a rear wing we haven't seen for a while from them. I thought they would use the same wing they use in Canada, but in Canada they used a medium downforce rear wing. This is more medium-low. They used the same wing in Saudi. We saw how they improvised that middle part where the DRS activator is. And the wing itself has a pretty big upper plane, but the lower plane is very small to hopefully give it more straight line speed down the straight. As I said, we've only seen this wing in Jeddah as of right now, and we're going to see it reused in Silverstone. Red Bull is also using a rear wing that we haven't seen for a minute. It's a medium to low downforce, just like the McLaren. The upper plane is a bit bigger, so they have a good DRS effectiveness, but the lower plane is pretty small, exactly like the McLaren. Both rear wings are pretty similar, but as you can see, there are differences between the McLaren and the Red Bull. The McLaren's rear edges on the rear wing are more curved out, while on the Red Bull, they're straight lined for that vortex towards the top. But then looking at the extreme of a low downforce rear wing here at Silverstone, it's your Alpine team. We do know that these Renault engines have been down on power for a very long period of time, and I think that's why we see Alpine with such a low downforce wing. We will see that on other teams though, so it might just be teams that don't have the straight line speed and need it for a GP like this. Gasly does come in with a 30th place grid penalty, so the chances of him actually coming back through the field are pretty slim considering how close the grid has been. The next four teams are Aston Martin, RB, Sauber, and Williams. I will go over Haas and Mercedes, don't worry, I'm not going to miss those, but let's go over these four first. The highest downforce wing out of all 10 of them that we have is the Aston Martin. I would even probably call this a high to medium downforce rear wing. We've seen it be used in a lot of GPs where downforce was required. And for this team, I think this is the right step considering they've had the tire shredding problem. They've been great in straight line. They've had a good DRS activator as well. The car has been shredding drag really well. Its biggest problem has been getting the correlated downforce in those long corners like turns 6 and 7 in Silverstone. So maybe they're trying to use this rear wing to combat that. Looking at the RB team, they've used this rear wing before. It was introduced in Australia. It's just medium downforce, if not even maybe medium low. So a big contrast to what we just saw with Aston. But then when you look at a team like Sauber, who probably has the lowest downforce rear wing, probably up there with the Alpine, this is where you can really see the extremeness of a team that needs straight line speed. The lower plane is not that big, and the upper plane is not that big as well. It is probably the lowest downforce. Alpine is up there with them. Williams then goes with a medium downforce rear wing. We've also seen this throughout the season, and pretty crazy to see the difference from 23 to 24. Now that their car is better on overall downforce, they don't need such a skinny wing at every single GP. Last two teams in a very weird order is Haas and Mercedes, and if you look at the Haas, you can see a bit of a difference in that side pod. We will talk about that later. We've seen this Haas rear wing before. They've used a skinny wing like this through most of the season for that medium to low downforce. They did add the gurney flap as to why I'm saying medium to low. We can see that in the upper and lower plane because it is skinnier than most cars on the grid. Let's see how it goes with their updated car. As for Mercedes, same story like Ferrari, it's a medium downforce rear wing. They probably do it for correlation as there are some updates coming here from Mercedes, but they have yet to be pictured. Real quickly, just some updates on the track before getting into the cars. As we can see, this blue line has now been implemented into Stowe Corner, where we commonly see the cars go off track. Track limits does happen here a lot in qualifying, I would even say in the race, for teams to try and gain an advantage, because the wider you go, the more speed you can carry into that hard braking zone towards the end of the lap. But they added this blue line to track when the teams go over. It tells the FIA if the car has had all 4 wheels off the track, a way better way than actually looking at it on an eye level. It's easier for them to track this down, and more gravel was added on the outside of this turn as well to try and combat cars that go wide. But now looking at the teams, the first team that I want to go over is Red Bull. They've brought an update here, and while it isn't very visible to the eye, there are only slight changes we can make. They've obviously brought the livery that we can now see on the car. I think it looks pretty good. The red blotches actually go well with the color, obviously considering they have that Red Bull on the top. It mixes very well, and it's a nice livery. But as for the car, we do know it's a floor and diffuser update. We're not going to see the diffuser unless we get a great picture by Xavi, who usually gets us those amazing floor pictures and diffuser pictures. But from what we can go here, we can compare the Venturi tunnels, and that first Venturi tunnel slot is a little closer to the bib tray part, which we've seen commonly on teams. If this is a floor upgrade, as I said, we're not going to see it. They haven't really changed the height of the floor. They've changed only that part right there to what I can see. We're probably going to get more updates on this throughout the season, but this is to show that a floor upgrade has been added to the car, and at some point, hopefully we see the diffuser. Their diffuser has always been known with a bunch of profiling and very complicated in comparison to the other competitors, and impressive to say the least. Another team that's brought an upgrade here that's not very visible is Aston Martin. The front wing they currently have on is the Imola one, but this should be revised from their previous spec. Aston Martin was one of the teams that got hurt really badly in 2023 from the directive of wing flexing. It was a big talk for them. Theirs was pretty much under the radar banned when nobody was talking about it. And supposedly, this new update to the front wing is to give them more flexing and hopefully give them better overall downforce. The team is going to bring a huge update in Hungary, but this is just a little addition before what we're expecting to be a B spec for the car. Now let's talk about Ferrari, who also has a different front wing here. The team in Austria tried 2 different setups on Sainz and Leclerc, and apparently it was a very good thing for them to understand where they need to go for this SF24. They say the optimization for the car could give them 2 to 3 tenths, which is what they're missing to be in line with Red Bull, McLaren, and Mercedes. So trying different front wings like the spec they had in the beginning of the year and the Imola spec could prove to give them that if the flow of air is changed dramatically through the front wings. They are slight changes, but they could play a big role. We've seen that now with the front wings, with the air getting hit there first, it plays a big factor in the rest of the car. The top front wing is the updated one that we saw in Imola, and the bottom one is what they started the year with. As you can see right before getting to the end plate, the change that's been done on the top front wing and the bottom front wing. It's pushing for more outwash on the top, while on the bottom, it's a bit more evened out and straight lined from the beginning nose. For Ferrari, it's mainly about optimization of the package they had. They brought 2 big packages within a very close period of time, both Imola and Spain. So let's see if that adds that missing performance for them. The biggest upgrade we're going to see here, and that I covered even in my video before, but now we finally get a visual of it, is the Haas car. As you can see from this picture right here, the old and the new spec of the side pod. We even saw that in their rear wings, and we'll probably get even better images of this tomorrow, which I will cover as well. This new side pod style is a complete difference to what they had before. The old one was more closer to what the RB19 had, what the AMR24 has, while the new one is pretty much identical to that of the McLaren. From this picture alone, it's really hard to tell if it is an overbite. It does look like it slightly. It's also pretty close to what Alpine had last year, but mainly it's got a lot of similarities to the new MCL38 side pod. We'll have to see with better pictures on Friday how this side pod and floor upgrade is going to work together. As we can see, here is the new updated floor. It's really hard to tell what's going on here because this is the part that goes under the car. We'll never actually see this, and mainly the electronic pieces are between this part and the chassis. But we can see just slightly down towards the bottom, there is a new floor edge part. And if you look at the Venturi tunnels, they're very similar to that of Alpine, with not too many defining details. We see in Red Bull, Ferrari, and McLaren, they all have a cutout in that first part of the Venturi tunnels. And we really don't see that on the backmarker teams or any team that's really behind. Maybe with how complicated the floors are, these teams never end up coming around to making these little intricate details to add those little tents like the big teams do. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. We're still missing some stuff. I will cover it on Friday. Definitely with Mercedes, we should have gotten something at the very least. We know there's upgrades here, but sadly it's not pictured. Hopefully one day I can be there and I picture them myself so we get this perfectly in order and I'm able to release these a bit earlier. That'd be a lot nicer. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe. It would mean the world, and peace.